Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode. I'm Sarah Haase.
And I am Mike Marani.
And I'm Antonio Mayo.
Great. And this week, it's a really special week for us. We had the chance, it's the last week in March 2022, and we had the chance to participate in a virtual MVP summit this week. So in honor of that, we wanted to really do a session about our experiences becoming MVPs, what it means to us, what we think it means for Microsoft and the community at large. So I think we're going to talk about being an MVP or becoming an MVP this week.
It's a good time for that. I just finished the MVP Summit today. It's always good to talk about MVPs and what we do and what are we excited about.
It's always the highlight, at least one of the highlights of the year for us, not only because we get to learn a lot about Microsoft products and meet the product team, but just getting to connect with other people in the community, spend time with folks, build friendships, build connections at Microsoft that help us in our careers and help us to help customers with the products that we champion. So yeah, MVP Summit's an awesome event.
That's right, and that's about how much we can say about MVP Summit, because all the rest is sort of
NDA.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about it, and it's like a teaser. Like there's so many, we learned a lot of things, a lot of cool things. We are under NDA, we can't share anything. We just have to wait and always go and check the public announcements before we can share anything that we've learned in the past.
That's right. We can make statements that are horribly informative, like everyone's going to love it.
Yeah, exactly. And they do take the NDA really seriously.
Yeah, they do.
I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I've been in sessions at MVP Summit where they've seen someone recording the session and ask them to leave. And when that happens, you get thrown out of the MVP program. I don't think you ever get to come back. I'm not sure about that last part, but they take the NDA really seriously, so you do have to respect it.
Yeah, and we've seen it. If you try to take pictures like screenshots for your own benefit, just because you don't want to type it or write it down, they just stop you. It's like you can't take pictures.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And you have to be really concerned with and focused on what you're communicating, because that NDA is taken very seriously. You can't have a one-off sideline conversation or certainly social media, things like that. But I think that a good place to start is maybe how we became MVPs and kind of what it means to us and where we think it has a place in the ecosystem of Microsoft 365 and really kind of the community at large.
Good idea. So Antonio, you are our first MVP, I think. Why don't you start first?
Sure. So I've been part of the MVP program for 10 years. Let's see, how did I first come to the MVP program? So back in 2012, I was working at a software company here in Ottawa, where I live, and I was working on a particular product that they had for SharePoint, and this was SharePoint on-prem in those days, of course. And I was spending a lot of time at conferences, and I noticed a lot of the sessions that I was going to were given by people that called themselves Microsoft MVP. So I kind of looked into what the program was and what they did, and I realized quickly what a tight-knit community it was. And I liked what I saw, so I thought, I'm going to try to speak at conferences. The first conference that I submitted a session to was SharePoint Summit that took place in Toronto in, I think, 2012. And I was amazed when they accepted my submission. I thought, awesome. So I went and I gave the session, and it went really well. I had a packed room. I think I was talking about SharePoint permissions at the time. And I did more of those and more of those, more of those, more of those. And the CEO of that company recommended me for an MVP award on the website, actually, on the Microsoft website. And a few weeks later, Microsoft contacted me, asked me to provide all of the contributions that I had made. And a few months later, I received an MVP award, which was amazing. I certainly didn't expect it, but it was pretty cool when it happened. And Sarah, how about you? How long have you been an MVP, and how did you?
I've been an MVP 4 years, and And it's really interesting. So I come from a background similar, started doing presentations in the SharePoint space. I don't want to say how long ago, a while, maybe even before you, before 2012. I don't know if I want to say how long, but for quite some time. And I have helped organize SharePoint Saturday Twin Cities events for many years. I can't even recall how many, over 10 years. And do a lot of blogging and other things. And what's interesting is that I've had a few conversations with people who are in the community space, meaning they create content, they answer public forum questions, they do podcasts or blogs, or they speak at events and user groups, or they run a user group. I was actually nominated for an MVP award, I think twice. The first time I was nominated and I submitted community activities and I didn't get the Microsoft MVP award. And then the second time I submitted community activities and I did. So I think that there's something important to be said for. It's sometimes is something that goes really quickly, but there are also people I know who have been really active in the community, and that maybe it takes a little bit more time, or maybe they have to be nominated more than one time. And I think that that's certainly okay too. There isn't a single path. I think that there can sometimes be a multitude of paths. And the other thing that I also think is really important is that you can be nominated by someone else, but I think you can self-nominate now. Yeah. Can't you?
Yeah, anymore. You used to be. Now you have to be nominated by Microsoft or another MVP.
Or another MVP. One of the things that I think is important to mention, well, I'll hold that because maybe a whole separate theme after we talk a little bit about you, Mike, is paths to becoming an MVP. So I'm going to hold that thought. Mike, tell us about you and your journey to become an MVP.
It's been 7 years, actually. This is my 7th year, going on to 8th, becoming an MVP. So back in 2015, a good friend, another MVP, nominated me. But I started the community activity way before that. I remember my first speaking at a conference was in 2007. There was a local. That's back then when Microsoft, the release of MOS, of SharePoint 2007, they were doing events across North America. So that was my first conference with Microsoft Ottawa. So I was quite a bit involved in the community, just speaking in different conferences at the SharePoint Summit in Canada, but I wasn't really focused on it. I had different focus. I was growing a business. I had my own company, and I was not really dedicated to contribute a lot to community activities. So I would do a few sessions every year, like probably every couple of months. I'll speak somewhere, blog here and there, just and respond to some of these MSDN posts, but I really wasn't paying attention to it much up until 2013 when I sold previous business, and a friend said, "Why don't you become an MVP? You've been putting a lot of community activities." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Actually, I developed already a lot of friends in the MVP community, so I've known quite a bit friends. Then Antonio was one of them as well. So being in the same city." So yeah, like, okay, well, that's probably a good time right now. I can focus on, doing more community contributions and speaking more and blogging more. And yeah, I got introduced to the MVP lead in Canada and told me, yes, you're ready for it. So just submit, make sure you have your submissions for the past 12 months and submit by that date. Back then, it used to be every quarter. So I submitted for January 2015, and I was surprised that I got it. I did not think I'd get it, but yeah, I've been an MVP since then.
Awesome.
And I'll add just a little bit to my little background. I had done a lot of conference speaking before that, 2012, just not on a particular Microsoft product. It was a lot of other topics, a lot of other conferences I spoke at, but I didn't just start speaking in 2012. It was just focused on the SharePoint community at the time. That was kind of when I started that focus.
And I love that both of you are willing to talk about how long you've been doing that. For me, I just said a long time. I'll leave it at that. So I do talk to quite a few people about paths to becoming, and I often get asked this, like, what's the best path to become an MVP? which I think is an interesting question. And maybe the way to start that is to talk about what we mean when we say community activities, because it's a very specific phrase that means something to us as MVPs, but I think it might be good to define it for everyone listening in.
Yeah, the way I look at it is you are contributing to a group of people, whatever. The community does not have to be your hometown. That's how we look at it. So you are sharing the knowledge with others for free. You're not getting paid for it. You have a passion. You definitely have to have a passion. Otherwise, you just don't do it. And then you are sharing your knowledge with other people. You're teaching them about whatever technology it is, whether you're speaking or whether you're blogging, whether you're doing podcasts, whether you're setting up an event. It's an activity that allows you to share that knowledge that you have with others that don't know it.
It's a really good definition because it can be virtual or in-person help. You could host a virtual coffee chat where people come and talk about Microsoft 365 or about a specific product, for example, SharePoint, and kind of put it out there on social media and invite people at large to come and just, and you schedule and maybe you do light facilitation, but that's a community activity because you're giving back. You're fostering learning or a conversation or some kind of a net gain.
Yeah. So over the last year, I've been mentoring one of my colleagues here on becoming a Microsoft MVP. He very much wanted to, and I've been working with him over the last year. And one of the things he did is exactly what you just described, Sarah. He basically set up Clubhouse calls every Friday evening that he posted on one of the Microsoft support sites for the Power Platform and business applications. And basically anybody could come and join, and he would help them with whatever Power Platform issue that they have. And he's been doing this for a year, every Friday evening, and he's a machine. He's just had so many people join and help and provide just great feedback to him on just the help that he gives them, and his technical help that he's given them on whatever issue they're running into on the Power Platform. And he just received his MVP award, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. So yeah, it could be things like that. It could be blogging. All of us have done blogging in the past. Sarah, you've been phenomenal at blogging over the last year, a couple of years actually. What else? Certainly conference speaking, user group speaking, organizing conferences. That's certainly a meaningful and a community contribution that requires a lot of hard work. Organize a conference. What else? Providing feedback to Microsoft with product group interactions. Microsoft sometimes has product group interactions where you can join and provide feedback related to a particular product. Mm-hmm. What else? A lot of the forums where people post technical questions, responding and providing answers there, and people rate the answers. Those count as community contributions.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of contributions.
The one I enjoy the most is the forums or the tech community.microsoft.com. Even though I haven't been contributing much lately, just for lack of time, but it is, for me, it is fun just to go and you watch all the answers, all the questions, and you pick what question you're most comfortable with because you've done it and you've seen it and you have a solution for it and you answer it, and basically you're helping not only that person, maybe millions, hundreds of thousands, or whoever goes into that tech community and leads it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just as there are such a wide variety, right? If you can dream it, and you can then really, that's anything you can dream of that's giving back to the community for free, because that's the idea, right? We're not selling the community activities. They're available, for free for people to learn. But much the same way that there are an endless array of community activities that you could do, there are a lot of different paths for people to become MVPs. And they don't have to become a conference speaker to become an MVP, although you see a lot of MVPs that speak at conferences. Similarly, you don't have to become a podcaster if that's not something that you're comfortable with, or a blogger. I know MVPs that really got to being MVPs by really doing those Clubhouse sessions, hosting Q&A events, answering forum questions, because that's what they enjoy doing. So there are a lot of different paths, but I do think it's important to maybe build relationships. If you're interested in becoming an MVP, I do think it's important to have conversations with Microsoft, community managers, product team members, things like that, or other MVPs to ask questions, and maybe to help gain insight, because they could help you get some perspective on maybe different ways that you might contribute and help yourself stand out a little bit in those contributions.
I think that's a great point. Making those connections with Microsoft people, if you're not already in the MVP program, it can be really hard to do. Like, as part of the MVP program for us, we're often introduced to Microsoft people, or sometimes they're reaching out to us. So I find it's easier now for us to make those connections. But for someone that hasn't, what I've found is really helpful for making connections with folks at Microsoft is just knowing what Microsoft product you're passionate about, and then finding the people on, for me, I've found on Twitter, finding the people on Twitter that work at Microsoft, that work on those products, that are community leaders in those products, or who post announcements about those products, and just connect with them there and follow those tweets, follow those articles, and try to reply back there with feedback if you have any, because that can certainly be seen as, if you're providing constructive feedback, as really helpful, and that can help to form those relationships with people, because they get to know you, right? If you're constantly providing a feedback on a product that you're passionate about, trying to improve it, or giving kudos when something is really good, they remember you and they get to know you. It can really help you form those connections in Microsoft.
Sure. And just to kind of wrap up this specific topic about becoming an MVP, you have to, if anyone interested in becoming an MVP, you have to focus on a category. You go to the mvp.microsoft.com, and there's all the categories there, and you focus on a specific category. For us, for example, Office Apps and Services, and you contribute based on what we've talked to you about all the different ways to contribute to that. But you need to focus on that category. That's how you can become an MVP, and you have to log those activities for the past 12 months, and someone will have to nominate you, and then you'll become an MVP. But you need to have to focus on one, unless you're a superstar. And I've known some MVPs that they have a couple of categories, or MVPs in a couple of categories. It's difficult. It's not easy, because you're putting a lot of efforts there. Focus on one, and then keep a track of them for the past 12 months, and definitely you'll become an MVP. Definitely, you should.
I think that keeping track of activities, like if you really do want to become part of the program, because there's a lot of benefit to being part of the program, it is, like Mike said, to track the activities, to actually, keep a running list of all your contributions, the number of people you impacted, the number of people that were in your session, if you gave a conference session, or the number of views on your blog, URL to the actual, blog article, or something about the session, description of the session that was posted, that type of thing. It's important to track all of that over the last year, because you're going to be asked to submit all of that so that they can go verify your contributions as well.
Yeah, you said something very important, the URL. Microsoft requires an evidence. So if you have a live URL, you put it in, or typically what I do, if the URL is no longer valid, for example, if I was a speaker at a session, at a conference, and the conference changed for a different year, I just take a picture of the email I had, or a picture of my session, share it from my OneDrive, and just put that URL in. But definitely you have to keep track of what you've done, and an evidence, so Microsoft can validate that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, the MVP program used to be about, I remember the original description was about providing deep technical knowledge on a particular product or product category. I think that has evolved over time, and it's not always deep technical knowledge, although that is still very much appreciated and I think respected. It is also about topics that help people to understand how to best roll out a product, how to best adopt a product, foster its usage, grow its usage, understand the business context of a product. All of those things also are very important and matter when it comes to these kinds of programs.
Agreed. And community service. And the wonderful thing about the MVP program is, I would also think about, if you're interested in becoming an MVP, think about what you're passionate about. Think about what your strengths are. Are you a great organizer? Are you a great verbal communicator? Are you a great written communicator? But make sure that you're thinking about what you're passionate about, and then you engage in the community activities that you get excited to do, whatever those might be. I also think that there's an element of personal brand. You want people to recognize the value that you provide in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. If I'm going to think about, for example, a round robin of the three of us and what we focus on and what we do, when I think about Mike and I think about Antonio, I think about different specialty areas within Microsoft 365. And it's really that brand. You might speak and do topics on many different things, right? But you know, Antonio is very well known for security, compliance, MIP expertise that's vast and deep, right? And Mike very much about migrations and about OneDrive, and having a lot of experience in that. So I think it's important to think about that personal brand, because it is what will differentiate you from other people that might be submitting to become MVPs as well.
Definitely.
Very much. And Sarah, I think your specialty areas lie in user adoption, Yammer, certainly MIP now as well. What else? What else do you focus on? Lots of other topics.
We know a whole lot about MVP now. I know a whole lot about MVP, certainly more than I did a year ago or 2 years ago. And it doesn't mean that you can't morph, right? I think when I first started in the community, I did a lot of ROI, return on investment work for organizations, but I don't speak about that nearly so often anymore, because there is a level of you kind of get new passions or new things that you want to engage in or different topics. But I know people who are MVPs that are all about Power Apps, and that's what they focus on, are Power Apps, because that's what they're really passionate about. So you can be broad or you can be very specific. I don't think either one is going to get you to be an MVP faster. It's more about how you give back.
Exactly. Yeah. And it has a lot of perks also to being an MVP, and we interact a lot with the product group. We provide feedback. We get early access to all the upcoming new features, just because they want our feedback. So it's great to be part of the community. We develop friendships. I have developed so many friends becoming an MVP. You have that good connections with few MVPs, but what I enjoy the most is just getting on an MVP call with the product group and seeing what they have to offer and giving them feedback, or if there is a bug that I have encountered with a client. And that's where we bring the value of being an MVP to our clients. Is there's a bug, yes, we can log it with the support ticket, but we can go and send it to the product group, to the engineering, and see what's going on, if we can get it resolved faster, or maybe something we're doing wrong. So it has a little bit of advantage. It's good to, it has advantages. It has a lot of cool things around it as well, that I think that it's good to be, because you just have that relationship that if you're not an MVP, you may not have that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I enjoy often is when I discover a bug in the product, or I have a piece of feedback from a customer that I feel is really important, and I communicate it to the product team, and they actually go in and make a change to fix it or address it. And I see it shortly after reporting it. I'm like, wow, like I did that. Like I told them about that and they fixed it. That's always really exciting, I find.
And one of the best perks, I think, is what I call the phone a friend. Or in this case, it's also tends to be a lot of the friends that I phone when I've got a Microsoft 365 problem that I cannot figure out, and it's an important one that I have to figure out. Phone a friend, those friends often are also MVPs. So it really does help when you have an MIP problem, you don't know who to call. Well, now you do. And I've actually done that before. So many times, could have been last month. But it's a great program. I definitely think you get out of it you get out of it much more than you put into it. Yeah. But I think it's important to go into it with that thought of service.
Yeah. And go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
And I was going to say that for me, one of the big enjoyment for me is just giving back, and I'm just not saying that because we do give back, but I started specializing in Microsoft because someone was teaching me from Microsoft, spending hours free time, just to teach me back in the days in 2001 about content management server. He'd send me books. Back then, there's not much blogs and not much online stuff. And it would be on the call 2-3 hours at a time, just teaching me how to be an expert in content management servers. So that kind of stayed with me for a while, although became an MVP more than a decade after. But I just want to give back because I've became successful, I think, just learning from that person. Of course, you just put your own efforts in, but it resided with me well that I want to give back because I was taught that way.
100%.
I was going to ask, do you guys, so to go around the horn, do you guys have any funny stories as part of the MVP program that happened to you that you remember from either an MVP summit or as a result in the MVP program?
Other than meeting the both of you?
Apparently that was funny. I'll start one. Then you guys can think of, because I've got one. So it was, I think 2014 or 2015. We were at MVP Summit, and MVP Summit is like a mini conference where the Microsoft product people organize a bunch of sessions that you attend on different topics. And one of them was an Ask Me Anything session where it was designed for the MVPs to give the product team leadership feedback. So you had, the directors and the group managers up at the front, and basically anyone in the audience could stand up and give them some feedback or ask a question or whatever. And the Microsoft decided to bring in beer for this session. So they had beer there and make it a relaxed atmosphere. So we're all sitting there.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So we're all sitting there drinking. And, you start to get from some of the people at the front when you ask a hard question, right? Sometimes the answer was, oh, that's really good feedback. I'll have to think about that. So we turned into a drinking game. And anytime one of them said, that's good feedback, we would take a drink.
Never, ever, ever at any event create a drinking game off of somebody answering a question about M365 with "it depends."
Yeah. Oh, that was another one. Yeah. Yes. So that was my funny story. You guys?
I can't think of anything.
I can think of many, but not that I'm going to share on a podcast because I don't think the people that the stories are about would appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal stories in the MVP Summit that you should not be sharing on podcasts.
That's right. I think those are under NDA. It is a great program though, and it's definitely it's definitely been a great opportunity to be able to engage in different ways with Microsoft and with other professionals that are really interested in the same things. If there's something that I think that people don't necessarily understand, it's why you would give your personal time. But I used to hear the same thing about things like SharePoint Saturdays back in the day. Why would I go listen to SharePoint on a Saturday? But those people who are really into it are like, I'd give a Saturday for this every other week because they're so passionate about it and they want to learn about it. So I think that it's magic for those that are really passionate about it.
And we meet our best friends often as part of the program. Like, it's one thing I've been really impressed with the program in Microsoft is just how tight-knit a community this is, how much we all know each other. We spend tons of time together. We become friends. We become each other's best friends in the world often. And it's nice to have that. Like, that is part of what I get out of it or what I enjoy. And it is meeting people, making friends with people, being able to geek out and talk about technology with people because I find it fun. And, Sarah, like you said, have someone to call when you've got issues, right? Have, pick up the phone and call a friend because you've got a question you don't have an answer to. You've got lots of technical experts who are your best friends that you can reach out to. So all that is awesome.
All right. Great topic, and clearly one that we're passionate about because I think it's a supersized episode talking about our experiences and our journey and thoughts on how people can share that journey to become an MVP. So thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.